Secrets do not always hide in darkness. Sometimes they sit in plain sight and wait for the right pair of eyes to stop pretending. My name is Clara Vance. I am 35 and I run a crisis management firm in Boston. People hire me when their fortunes, reputations, or families are one headline away from collapse. I fix things that other people ruin. I do not panic. I do not chase ghosts. I do not inherit problems. At least I believe that until the morning I received a letter with no return address and my full name written in ink I recognized but could not immediately place. Inside was a single sentence and a key. You were never supposed to see what they built on your name. Box 12 is still intact. No signature. No sender. Just the key, small and brass, stamped with the number 12 like it belonged to a storage unit or an archive vault. The postmark was from New Haven. I read the sentence 5 times, then placed the letter on my desk and made a list the same way I do when a client calls about a scandal they claim is a misunderstanding. Who knows my handwriting from childhood? Who would use it without asking? Who benefits if I open box 12? Who panics if I do not? At noon I called my father. He answered on the second ring with the voice he saves for formalities and mild disappointment. You have 2 minutes, he said. I received a letter from New Haven, I said. Someone thinks I have a claim on something called box 12. Silence. Not confusion. Recognition. We are not reopening that, he said. So it is real, I replied. You do not need to involve yourself. Your mother handled it years ago. My mother died 8 years ago. And she stayed dead with her secrets intact, he said. Leave it alone. He ended the call without a goodbye. That was confirmation enough. That evening I pulled the only box of old papers I kept in my apartment. School forms, medical records, a few letters from my mother during her hospital stays. In the stack was a photocopy I had always ignored. A receipt from a storage facility in New Haven. Unit 12. The date was 20 years ago. The registered owner was not my mother or father. It was me. I never signed it. I was 15. I booked a train ticket for the next morning. The storage facility sat behind a row of old brick warehouses converted into co-working spaces and overpriced ceramic studios. The manager was a man in his 60s who looked like he had been asked to care about nothing for decades and had obeyed. I handed him the key and my ID. He glanced at the screen, then at me. This unit has not been opened since it was rented, he said. By who? Signed to you, he said. Payment auto-drafted every year by a Clarke and Price account in Hartford. I did not know anyone by that name. He led me down a corridor that smelled like dust and plastic. Unit 12 was smaller than I expected. When I turned the key, the lock clicked like something relieved. Inside was one item. A locked black case the size of a carry-on. No labels. No instructions. On the lid, someone had taped a single line from a document I recognized instantly. Custodial rights transferred upon majority unless contested in writing. I lifted the case. It was heavier than it looked. Back in my apartment, I set it on the table and stared at it until after midnight. The only people who ever used my name without asking were my parents and the lawyers they trusted. My father's voice replayed in my mind. We are not reopening that. He did not say it was nothing. He said it was sealed. At 1 a.m, I sent a message to the only person who knew how to break open a safe without breaking the law. His name was Lucien Hale. He owed me 2 favors and respected fear less than I did. He replied in one line. I will bring the tools. Do not touch it until I arrive. I did not sleep. At 3:30 a car stopped outside my building. Lucien did not knock. I left the door unlocked. He set a small steel kit on the table and examined the case without asking where it came from. When he pried the lock open, the lid lifted a 1/4 inch on its own. Inside were folders tied with ribbon, old photographs, a sealed envelope with my name, and a legal contract with 4 signatures. 2 I knew. 2 I did not. Lucien did not speak. He never does when silence is more precise than any question. I pulled the envelope free and opened it. The letter inside was handwritten and dated the year my mother went into treatment for the last time. Clara, if you are reading this, then your father lost the argument. What they built with your name is still active. You were made a custodian before you could spell the word. The others will try to reclaim it now that you are old enough to say no on record. There is money. There is land. There is something older than both. Box 12 is only the beginning. Find the registrar's copy before they do. If they reach you first, do not let them speak in private. No signature. I did not need one. My mother wrote it in the same ink she used to sign my field trip forms and permission slips. I looked at Lucien. He raised an eyebrow the way he does when he sees smoke before fire. What did they put in my name? I asked. He pointed to the contract with his chin. Start there. The header read Clarke and Price Holdings. Below it, the title of the entity made my fingers go still. Vance Mineral Estate and Rights Trust. Registered owner. Clara Vance, minor. Custodian rights. Deferred until age 35. My birthday was in 6 weeks. Lucien leaned back in his chair and said calmly, "They built something under you and planned to keep you out of it until the paper forced them to explain." I closed the case and tied the ribbon around the folders again. My mother had warned me in the only way she could. I was not inheriting something. I had been carrying it my entire life without knowing. And someone else had been using it the entire time. By morning, I had read the trust document twice and understood only one thing with full clarity: someone had built a fortune under my name, and assumed I would never come looking for it. Lucien sat across from me with the patience of someone who had seen other people's lives detonate before breakfast. "There are 3 names on that contract besides yours," he said. 2 are trustees. 1 is a witness. You know any of them? I scanned the signatures again. Harlen Price. Elias Clarke. Judith Vance. Isaac Keller. Judith Vance was my grandmother. She died when I was 10. I had not seen her handwriting since she mailed postcards with seashells taped to them. My father once mentioned a business partner named Clarke. He never gave a first name. Price was unfamiliar. Keller meant nothing. "What do you want to do first?" Lucien asked. "Find the registrar copy," I said. "My mother said it exists." "It will not be digital if they wanted it forgotten," he replied. I knew where to start. My grandmother's attorney in Hartford, who retired 15 years ago, kept a private archive in his home until the state forced him to transfer everything to storage. The firm that inherited the files was Warner and Pike. I called their office at 9 sharp and asked for archived estate documents under Vance and Clarke. The paralegal asked for proof of relation. I sent a copy of my birth certificate before she could finish the sentence. She called back 20 minutes later. "We found a collection of sealed files matching those names. Stored off-site. Retrieval will take 2 days." "Bill me," I said. As soon as I ended the call, my phone rang again. My father. "You opened it," he said, not asked. "You put my name on something without telling me. You were a child. I was the owner. You were the signature they needed." There it was. "No epalegi. No denial." "What is the mineral estate?" I asked. "A parcel of land with extraction rights. It was worthless when your grandfather acquired it. The trust bought adjoining land. Then they found something under it." "What? You do not want it. That is not your line to deliver anymore." He exhaled like I had cost him time. "You are 3 months early," he said. "For what?" "For the meeting where they plan to tell you about your role. It was structured to activate at 35. You were never meant to handle it alone." "Then why the storage unit?" I asked. Silence again. Then, "Your mother insisted." Before he could disconnect, I said one last thing. "Someone has been drafting payments from Clarke and Price for 20 years to keep Box 12 hidden. If you did not do it, someone else did. They knew the key belonged to me." He did not acknowledge it. "Whatever you think you found," he said, "you do not understand the scale of it." "I will. Do not involve outsiders." He meant Lucien. I ended the call without courtesy. Lucien had already opened the black case again and removed a thin folder tied separately from the rest. "Your mother wanted you to see this last," he said. Inside were 4 photographs, all taken on the same property at different times. The land was remote, heavy with trees and shallow hills. In 2 of the pictures, drilling equipment stood half-assembled. In another, the ground was already cut open. The 4th photograph showed 4 people standing near a survey marker. My father. My grandmother. A man I did not know. and a fourth figure whose face the wind had blurred but whose posture looked like my mother's in the years before she stopped being seen. Each photograph was dated, all from a single summer. The year I turned 15. The same year the unit was rented. Lucien studied me. You want to know who has been moving money through your name, or what they found in the ground first? Both, I said. But the second one tells me why they hid the first. I took the contract again and wrote down the full trust name. Vance Mineral Estate and Rights Trust. Then wrote one sentence beneath it. If it was worthless once, someone turned it into something worth theft. Lucien made coffee without asking and placed the cup near my hand. If they waited this long to tell you, he said, they needed the clock to protect them. That means whatever profit or leverage came out of this, they were not planning to share. My mother wrote that they will try to reclaim it when I am old enough to refuse on record. That sounds like someone who knew she was cut out and wanted you to have teeth when the time came. I closed the case and tied it shut. Next step, he asked. Find where the land is. Then find who is using it. And if they are still pulling from it, he said. Then I take back what is mine, I replied. And I decide how loud they have to bleed to stop pulling. Lucien nodded once. Approval without praise. At noon, a message arrived from Warner & Pike. Retrieval confirmed. Files will be ready for inspection within 48 hours. Photo ID required. 2 days. That meant 2 days for whoever put my name on the trust to realize I had unlocked the wrong door first. I packed the case, the letter from my mother, and the photographs into a bag and locked it. When I opened my apartment door, an envelope was already on the floor, slid under while we talked. No stamp. No name. Just another key. This one older. This one marked with a different number. 17. And one line on the paper taped to it. If you open 12, they will come for 17 next. Do not let them get there first. I placed the new key on the table beside the first one and read the note again. If someone knew I had opened Unit 12, they were either watching the storage facility, tracking the payment trail, or closer than I imagined. Lucien leaned against the counter with his arms folded. 17 is not a coincidence. They stored multiple things under your name. Or under the trust, I said. Then the question is whether 17 was locked before or after they buried 12. I searched the black case again. Nothing mentioned any secondary box or storage. The ribbon folders held trust documents, land maps, and unsigned amendments. The sealed envelope had already given its warning. The photographs confirmed the land existed and had been used. I checked the contract again. In small print near the bottom was a reference number linked to off-site holdings. CP12, CP17, CP19. I had never noticed it until now. They built multiple boxes, I said. Not just mine. Lucien understood before I finished the thought. We need to find out how many names they used. Or how many identities they buried, I said. Before we touched the second key, I photographed both and sent copies to a secure folder I kept off network. Then I called Warner & Pike again. I asked if any archived materials listed CP numbers or mineral trust annexes. The paralegal put me on hold. When she returned, her voice was different. We only found references to CP12 in your file. The others are registered under redacted custodians. Redacted how? I asked. Blocked by sealed addendum. I am not permitted to view them. Who is permitted? Only the named trustees or the signal custodian once they reach eligibility, she said. That meant me. Send me the index list and the seal codes, I said. I will try, she replied. That meant she would ask someone above her and half of it would be denied. When I ended the call, Lucien checked his watch. We move on 17 before anyone else does. The number on the key was engraved the old way. No logo or company name, just metal worn by time in someone's pocket. I searched New Haven storage facilities again, and noted any unit numbers still in use from before digitized locks. 3 places matched. We drove to the oldest first. The manager was younger and lazier than the last. He scanned the key, then shrugged. That lock was replaced years ago. The unit is sealed and unpaid. I am the registered custodian on record, I said. Then show me proof. I gave him my ID and waited. He came back 10 minutes later with confusion in his eyes. You are not listed as delinquent, he said. Payment is current, but the access file is restricted. I need clearance from the primary trustee. Name? I asked. He checked the screen again. Harlen Price. My pulse didn't move. My voice did. He is not authorized to restrict a unit registered to my name. He is marked as financial overseer, the manager replied. Then call him, I said. The manager hesitated. I will send a notice instead, which meant nothing would move for 24 hours. We needed a different path. Lucien and I returned to the car. He did not start the engine. We will not get in through his title, he said. Then we use mine, I said. But before we could plan more, my phone buzzed. A message with no sender. 17 is not storage. It is record. Do not let Price remove it first. More precise than the first warning. Someone was feeding me information and wanted me ahead of him, not behind. Lucien glanced at the message. Someone inside is working against them. Or using us, I said. He nodded once. Not disagreement, just acknowledgement. We drove to the second facility on the list. This one was smaller and located behind a closed antiques repair shop. The owner was an older woman with silver hair and eyes that picked through lies for sport. I placed the key on her counter and said nothing. She examined it like a jeweler. That is older than any unit here, she said. Who gave it to you? It was left in my name, I said. Names are cheap, she replied. Paper is worth more. I showed her my ID and the photocopy of the original rental receipt from Unit 12. She read it slowly. Same handwriting, she said. Same clerk code. Both from the same month. So 17 is here, I said. Perhaps, she replied. But if it is not listed under your birth name. I understood then. They had split the records across versions of me. My full name. My initials. A variant I did not use. I gave her the list of names tied to the original trust. Vance, Clarke, Price, Keller. She scanned the logbook behind her counter. One of those appears in our oldest register, she said. But not as owner. As witness. Which name? I asked. Keller, she replied. Box 17 was signed over to his authority 18 years ago, with a notation that the custodian was not yet of age. Is it still here? I asked. She held up the key again. Find the second half and I will tell you. I knew what she meant. The key alone was not enough. There were 2 locks. Where is the other key? I asked. She gave a small knowing smile. Whoever sent you the first knows where the second was hidden. We left without arguing. Outside, Lucien looked at me. You know who Keller is? No, I said. But your father does. I did not answer. I was already planning the next call I did not want to make. As we got in the car, another message arrived from the same number. Box 12 was leverage. 17 is origin. He will run to Hartford when he panics. Do not let him burn what he cannot erase. Lucien read it over my shoulder. Someone is betting on you moving faster than your father. They are betting on me finishing something he started, I said. Then we start taking ground before he does, he said. I picked up the key again. Cold metal. Quiet weight. This was not about inheritance. It was architecture built with my name as foundation. And I was done holding it without knowing what stood on top of it. Hartford felt colder than Boston even with the sun out. The kind of cold that belongs to offices where people file their lives in order to forget them. I called Warner and Pike from the car and asked for any index that mentioned Keller. The paralegal said nothing for a long second, then admitted that an old card catalog showed Keller as a witness on a sealed deposit. No date. No contents. Location redacted by a physical sticker on the card. Lucien listened with his eyes closed. He does that when he builds a room in his head before walking into it. When I hung up, my phone buzzed again. Same unknown number. Look where a registrar would leave a breadcrumb he was not allowed to mail. State Library Legal History Room, shelves H to K. Back flyleaf. I did not ask why they were helping. I picked a lane and drove. The State Library smelled like paper that had survived generations of hands. The Legal History Room was small and unguarded. Shelves H to K held case reporters and treatises with spines that still remembered their owners. I moved along the row until a slim volume caught my eye. Mineral Estates of New England. Inside the back cover, under the flyleaf, A narrow envelope had been taped and then painted to match the paper. Someone had hoped time would hide it. I peeled it away with the care of a surgeon. Inside lay a second key and a short note in neat block letters. If the sticker is gone, you are too late. If it is here, meet the box before he does. There are no copies. Lucien lifted the key to the light. Old brass. Same cut as the first. The number 17 matched. He smiled without showing teeth. Approval given, warning understood. The second storage facility sat behind a closed antiques shop 3 blocks from the courthouse. The owner with the silver hair watched us through the glass door before letting us in. I placed both keys on the counter. She studied them, then studied me. You found your second half, she said. I will pull the ledger. She returned with an old register as thick as a brick. Her finger moved down the columns until it stopped. She turned the book so I could see. Box 17. Custodian listed as C.V. Reed, care of J. Vance. Witness I. Keller. Remarks read only one word. Origin. She closed the book and gestured toward the back hall. I will open the outer door. Your keys turn the inner lock together. What you take is your decision. What you leave becomes mine to watch. The corridor was cool and narrow. At the end, a steel door waited with 2 keyholes set far apart. Lucien took one key. I took the other. We turned them at the same time. A heavy click, then a smoother turn. The inner door released. Inside the box sat a flat portfolio case and a metal envelope with a wax seal. The seal bore a mark I recognized from my grandmother's stationery. A simple V inside a circle. I lifted the portfolio first. Maps, survey plots, geologic assessments. The earliest map was hand-drawn, the kind you make in the field when you do not trust the version they want in the files. In the margin, one note appeared again and again. Shale seam, keep quiet. Beneath the maps lay a copy of an affidavit notarized by Isaac Keller. It was signed by 2 men who had worked as foremen on a private drilling project 15 years ago. The affidavit stated that pressure tests had been falsified to delay public reporting, while equipment was moved to a second site off the recorded parcel. The first signatory's name matched a photograph in my mother's hidden case. The second signatory was Elias Clarke. I moved to the metal envelope and broke the seal. Inside were 4 documents. The first was a registrar letter from Keller to my grandmother, never sent, admitting he had witnessed a minor named as owner because there was no adult left in the bloodline he trusted. The second was a codicil that would have shifted control to my mother on her 30th birthday. It was signed and not filed. The third was a bank record listing transfers into a blind account labeled CP extraction. The fourth was a will revision signed by Miriam Clarke, witnessed by Keller, and one other hand I did not know. It returned all mineral rights to the Vance line upon the custodian's majority. Lucien read the will revision and whistled once through his teeth. If this had been recorded, none of the trust games would have worked. Which means someone sat on it, I said. Or someone died before it could be filed, he said. Footsteps sounded in the hall. Slow. Confident. The kind of confidence that travels with a letterhead. The owner stepped into the doorway and lowered her voice. 2 men are at the front asking for the register. They do not have a warrant. I will keep them polite. You should decide what leaves and what stays. Lucien moved to the corner and pulled his phone. I will take photos while you choose. I worked fast. The affidavit, the will revision, the registrar letter. The earliest map with the margin notes. The bank record with the blind account. The rest I repacked with care. The owner waited without breathing too loudly. When we stepped back into the shop, 2 men turned as one. I had seen one of them in a photograph of a groundbreaking Harlen Price. He looked at the keys in my hand and positioned his smile between insult and civility. You have something that belongs to the trust, he said. No, irraplia. I have something that predates it. He glanced at the owner. She glanced back with the polite indifference of a person who will testify precisely if called. You are creating a problem you do not understand, he said. The problem was created 15 years ago, I said. I am only moving it into light. He decided not to argue with me and turned to the owner. We will need your register for inspection. The register is not leaving this counter without a subpoena, she said. He held her stare for a full second, then turned away as if the room had failed to meet his standards. When they reached the door, he looked back at me. No threat, only a calculation he did not bother to hide. They would move faster now. Good. So would I. We drove to Warner and Pike before Price could. The paralegal saw the documents and stopped pretending this was routine. She called a partner. The partner called the court. Within an hour we had an emergency hearing time for the afternoon and a clerk who agreed to take our filings immediately. I kept moving. I sent the photos to an off-site server. I copied the will revision to a clean drive and handed it to Lucien. If someone tried to steal my bag, they would lose time, not the proof. At noon my father called. No griting. Price is on his way to a judge, he said. So am I said. Do not file anything yet. Then give me a reason not to. He did not. Instead he said the only thing that made me stay on the line. Keller is missing. Since when? I asked. Since this morning. Is he running or gone? I asked. I do not know, he said. For the first time his voice tilted. Not fear. Calculation without a variable. You once told me not to involve outsiders, I said. You will call whoever you have to call and make sure Keller is found alive. If he is not, your part in this becomes a different crime. He said my name the way he used to when I was a child and had strayed too close to a road. You have no idea what you are triggering. I do, I said. I am taking custody of what carries my name. He hung up. I did not care. We filed at 1:15. The clerk scanned the will revision, the affidavit, the registrar letter, and the map. She stamped the file and assigned a docket. The hearing would be at 3. Price arrived at 1:20 with a stack of paper and a face that had learned to smile through court schedules. He saw me and shifted his stack to the other arm. A small tell. He was left-handed. People reveal more than they intend when they are forced to carry weight. Lucien waited beside me, quiet and watchful. The paralegal offered bottled water like it could help. Could not. At 2:58 the bailiff opened the door. We entered. The judge read our filing and asked only 2 questions. Where was Keller? When was the trust created compared to the will revision? The timeline favored us and the court knew how to read dates. Price argued for status quo. I argued for preservation and recognition of the original custodian. The judge signed an order to freeze any trust actions related to extraction, to secure the boxes under the court, and to compel production of the sealed annexes where redactions hid the rest. He set a second hearing for the morning and instructed both parties to present full indices. It was a temporary victory. It was also a lever long enough to move something that had sat in darkness for half my life. We stepped outside into light that felt new. My phone buzzed again. Same unknown number. He is not missing. He is being moved. Old rail spur behind the depot. Hour unknown. If you want him to speak, reach him before Price does. Lucien read it as I did. We did not speak. We walked. The depot sat 4 blocks away. Near a line people forgot to tear out when they switched to trucks. The spur ran behind a chain link fence and a row of scrub trees. A box truck idled with its lights off. 2 men stood by the rear doors, restless in the specific way of people waiting for an order that arrives by phone. We watched from the shadow of a loading bay. Lucien rested his hand on the phone that held our copies. This is where you decide how loud, he said softly. Loud enough to pull him out, I said. Not so loud they claim I interfered with an arrest. We waited. The men opened the doors and a third figure climbed down slowly. He was older than I expected, thinner and careful with each step. He had the posture of someone who has carried other people's secrets for too long. Isaac Keller, I said to myself. The name tasted like iron. I stepped from the loading bay into the open, and made sure the men saw me before they decided what story they wanted to tell. Lucien stood behind me, not close, not far. He did not look like security. He looked like consequence. The men reached for their pockets. Careful, I said. There are 3 cameras on this alley and a court order in my bag. They hesitated. Keller looked up and saw my face like someone finding a name he did not think he would ever be allowed to say again. Clara Vance, he said, voice rough. You are early. On purpose, I said. Behind us, a siren sounded in the distance. Not near. Near enough. The men looked at each other the way people do when their plan has just created more risk than reward. They closed the truck doors. Keller did not climb back in. I walked toward him, slow enough to keep the balance of the moment intact. "If you want the record to survive," I said, "you walk with me to the courthouse and say what you witnessed. If you ride in that truck, you will not be found until the paper becomes useless." He did not move for 2 long seconds. Then he stepped to my side. The men backed up. One raised his phone and typed a message with an urgency that had nothing to do with courtesy. The siren grew louder. We turned toward the street. I did not look back. I didn't wait for another warning. By sunrise, Keller was seated in a conference room with 2 recorders running and a notary present. Lucien handled security at the door. His hands never left his pockets, but no one tried to interrupt again. Keller gave names, dates, and transfer numbers. He signed 3 affidavits and handed over a flash drive with scans of the original filings. The trust revisions, the forged amendments, the mineral rights my grandmother never surrendered, all of it was recorded before they paid him to vanish. By noon, my attorney filed an emergency injunction in probate court. Harlen Price arrived too late to object. He saw the judge stamp the order with his own eyes. Everything under the Clarke Price trust structure was frozen. Every parcel, every royalty, every off-book transfer. They couldn't sell, rewrite, or bury it again. Elias Clarke didn't show his face. He sent a statement through counsel asking to resolve privately. I didn't respond. Box 17 held the last piece I needed, the handwritten codicil my aunt never filed. It named me as successor, reinstated the Vance holdings, and dissolved every clause that tried to erase our line. We registered it that afternoon. It was older than their forged replacements. Older beats newer in court. By evening their lawyers stopped calling. Not out of courtesy, out of strategy. You don't bargain when the other side has already opened the vault and copied the spare keys. My father finally called. He didn't apologize. He just said, "You finished what she started." I let the silence stand as my answer. I went back to the storage site one last time. The woman at the desk didn't ask for ID when I returned the first key. She just nodded like she'd been waiting years for someone to claim what was theirs. On the drive back, Lucien asked what I wanted to do with the land now that the title was clean. I said the only thing that felt true. Build something they can't lock up again. The past wasn't buried. It was documented. And now it was mine.